I had an interesting conversation with a student last week who admits to a certain amount of what I would call neuroses. In some ways you might call it self-defeating behavior, and another way you might look at it as defining behavior. And we were talking about how to learn to let go of some of that behavior, because sometimes it causes a lot of suffering. And this person asked, well, what would happen if Woody Allen were to let go of all of his neuroses and these defining aspects and behaviors of his personality? What if he chose the spiritual path? Would that have robbed the world of some of the best movies ever made, some of the great humor of our time? Would that have been fair to us or even to him? And that was very provocative, because I love Woody Allen. And his neuroses really do define him and a lot of other people. And he just had a movie open this week, and I've read the review of it, and it's really kind of interesting. They describe it as being sort of at the heart of all of his other movies as well, which is this existential concern about the nothingness of it all, the emptiness of it all. What's the purpose? What's the value? And he has a very dark, negative relationship to that concept, and suffers as a result, but somehow has managed to make almost all of us laugh about it. And I think that in its own way is wonderful, and a teaching of its own, and a gift to the world. I keep talking recently about nothingness. Rudy's talked about nothingness from the beginning. And rather than have it be something that causes despair, it's kind of the opposite. It's sort of maybe even a cause for celebration. But it's not a cause of celebration to the ego mind. Nothing is more terrifying to the ego mind than its meaninglessness, its nothingness, its ultimate futility. And if you're lucky, you turn it into humor, and Woody did a great job of it. But most of us turn it into a kind of despair and want to be released from this neurotic existential terror of this doesn't add up. In the end we just die. In the end it all turns into nothing. What does it mean? My son told me yesterday that he thought he had deleted all of his photographs, or had lost all of his photographs from the past 20 years. And he didn't, but that question made him wonder, what's it all for? If all of these extraordinarily exquisite stored memories are just suddenly gone, what do I have? What has it been about? And it's a good question. I mean, it brings it into a rather concrete form, memories on photo paper, as though they'll last forever, as though they're embedded in not only consciousness, but in our garage, in the box somewhere. And that gives validity to our time and space and, our having been here, and it's so valuable. And if that were to be lost, does it mean my life didn't happen? Does all the joy of it that was captured in those incredibly rich moments, is that invalidated? And then there's the question about, why is it sitting in the garage? Why are these in a box somewhere? if they're so valid and important? What is it that makes us think this is so meaningful? Which brings us, or at least me, to this kind of discussion about our spiritual practice. Sort of, what are we doing here? Most of us want to not be existentially terrified, to not be neurotic, to live a life that is somewhat pleasurable, free of some degree of suffering. We all would like that. And many, many people approach spiritual life as a panacea, as something that will soften that fear, soften that distress, allow you to get through a day feeling better about yourself. A lot of us think we can make ourselves better, more open, more available, more spiritually awakened, more conscious, better person, all of that stuff. We all think we can do that. And we all strive for that, and spiritual practice and meditation seems like a really good approach to that. I mean, most of the major corporations are suddenly teaching mindfulness meditation in their daily practices because they realize it's good for the corporation. And it's good for all the people in the corporation. Everybody's kind of benefiting from having these periods of stillness and relaxing some of the existential tension away. And that's good. It's all positive, nothing negative about it. But there's a core mistake. It's the problem of thinking, if you will, in the box. As long as you're in the box and you're fixing this stuff in the box, you're still in the box. You're still limited by, confronted by very specific definition, mostly body, mind, feelings, birth, death. It's all in the box, and you're trying to make things good in the box. But as long as that box exists, and it doesn't exist forever, that's part of our knowledge base, there's an incredible kind of discomfort, underlying discomfort, that we're in a box. And that we have a sense, I think many of us who did drugs in the 60s or who meditated deeply enough suddenly went, there's more than the box. Then we come back into the box. And we keep thinking, well, if I can get rid of that box, then I will be happy and free. And so we try meditation as a way of breaking down the walls and the barriers and the separations. We work at it and we work at it. And we have moments that are somewhat successful and moments where we're back in it. But we're basically profoundly unaware of a core problem. And it's a crazy problem. And it's very hard to make anybody believe it. But I'll tell you what the problem is. There is no box. Never has been, never will be. But it's hard to persuade people, because we are born, or we appear to be born, into this world, and very quickly begin to create the box. It's our comfort zone. It's enforced by our own need to not be limitless, infinite. It's created by our parents, by our friends, our families. Everybody's in there reinforcing this thing, which is ultimately, wow, totally secure. This is who I am. I'm a boy. I'm a girl. I am smart, I'm not so smart. I am defined by this, I'm defined by that, but that's your box. And you kind of go, I know who and what I am, and it's very helpful to function in a world of other boxes, knowing each person's definition, each person's form, size, where they fit, what slot they go into, what part of the world they inhabit, and it's a really valuable, valuable thing to function as a box in the world. So, people who come here, and to many other meditation classes, come saying, help me find a way to be happy in my box. And I can do that. But it kind of feels like, not exactly like I'm wasting time, but it's like, why am I trying to help them be happy in their box when the problem itself is the box? What am I supposed to be doing here? I can give you techniques. I can give you lots of techniques that will make you function better in that space. And that may be all I'm supposed to do, because why would I want to take Woody Allen out of his box? Why would I want to rob the world of what he found within that space? The boxing aspect of the world is the world we know, and in a way it's a kind of remarkable place. It wouldn't function without those definitions, those walls, those lines of demarcation that keep us separate from each other, separate from ourself, really, that keep us defined in a way that brings a certain amount of productivity and comfort, because that box has a function and a place and it contains something that's worthwhile. So why would any spiritual teacher want to rob you or the world of that? And I've been thinking about that all week long, honestly. Because I don't know how many of you want to be robbed of it, honestly. I don't know how many of you really want me to take that away. Not that I can, but I can give you tools for having it taken away. I can even give you a hunger for taking it away. But mostly I think what you want is be happy in the false creation of this limited time and space existence called a box. It's got your name on it. So I'm left in a conundrum about it. And I've been thinking about it and thinking about it. And not that I can give you an answer, but I went to a movie during the week. God knows if it's in anybody's corner of the woods, but it's a movie called Dying to Know, and it's the story of Tim Leary and Richard Alpert, who became Baba Ram Dass, and their journeys through breaking out of the box. And it's fascinating to contemplate. And I saw it within days of what I referred to last week as my anniversary, my 50th anniversary of my LSD trip, which was, defining moment. Box, Bruce, content, no box, no Bruce, no content, Bruce, box, content, now what? Now what? What do I do? So I'm watching this movie, which is about the very players who were instructive in my own transformative moment. And totally fascinated me. Tim Leary made, according to his calculations, 3,000 trips out of the box into the vastness, infinite realm of being, and came back from that time after time after time after time, reinforced as a man who knew what it was like to tune in, turn on, and drop out, or was it the other way? Turn on, tune in, drop out. He knew that there was a box, and you can go beyond the box, and he came back within the box to celebrate the power of getting out of the box, but he became definitely a celebrity in the box. He became known for his knowledge, his awareness, his insight into what was out there. He became celebrated as a kind of renegade in the world, and he loved it. He really loved it until it got unpleasant, as it does, and the story is worth seeing because it's not a happy journey. Richard Alpert took I don't know how many trips and came back from it in the end and decided to find out what this thing is about. What does it mean to live outside of a box? What does it mean that there is no box? How does any of this compute? What does it mean? And he started to, probably what those of us who went on a spiritual journey in the 60s discovered, there are people who talk about out-of-box experiences, like the Buddhists, Hindus even. Any mysticism, any mystical tradition in any religion talks about breaking out of the confines of some limited awareness that most of us live with. And he, like me, decided it was in the East, somewhere in India for him. For me, it was more looking toward Tibet. And he found this amazing teacher called Neem Karoli Baba, who impacted him in some remarkable way. And he came back literally as a different person. He was no longer the box of Richard Alpert. He was now, if you want to call it, the box of Baba Ram Dass. And he became a teacher who was constantly wafting in and out of the box, if you will, or maybe pushing the boundaries of the box, or maybe even stepping out of the box in some permanent way. Buddha called stepping out of the box awakening or enlightenment. Enlightenment can mean knowing that there is no box, which is a big awareness. It can also mean traveling lighter. My friend Paul Hederman calls it that, traveling lighter. Enlightenment means lighter, meaning you're not carrying the weight of being a separate being because you know that's not who you are or what you are. You begin to just be. Just be. Not be someone, something, limited, defined, just be, whatever being means. And awakening to that is a fairly extraordinary event. What's so interesting about these two guys is that Tim Leary, as we watch him at the end of his life, is a strangely unexplored person. He has a very, very confined heart chakra, which is very easy to see because Baba Ram Dass has really become very massive in his heart. And when he hugs Tim, you all know what it's like when you hug somebody who's not hugging you back. You know, it's kind of pushing you away at the same time. We had a friend who always did that. You would hug like this and she'd be pushing at the same time, literally pushing you away as she was trying, as you were embracing. And he has that aspect. Tim had, he had a very, you could feel a very closed heart. He had 5 wives probably for that reason. You know, he couldn't open that. He could talk to you endlessly about being out there, but what happens when you're out there? Where do you end up? You never end up out there. Not, I don't know about never, but mostly you don't end up out there. You end up right here, back in you, back in closed-hearted, small-minded, fame-seeking, hunger for recognition, personhood. That's your box. And Tim kept coming back, and I kept going, so what's the value of 3,000 trips into the vastness of the universe when you keep coming back here and don't have any real benefit from that? Maybe he did, but it certainly wasn't visible, as far as I could tell. Ram Dass, on the other hand, went off on a seeking mission, found what he was looking for, came back, and began to teach what he knew. He wrote a wonderful book called Be Here Now, powerful work about non-dualism, really, and had many, many students, has still to this day, I believe, has evolved a truly compassionate heart. If you ever read anything or listen to anything that he speaks, it's very compelling and very moving. But at the very end, as Tim is dying, and they're sitting together talking about death, talking about this journey about to happen, for Tim particularly, Tim confesses a complete unknowing about what's going to come. He's had vast images of the universe and its expansive nature, of its vast, embracing nature. And yet here he is about to die, and one, he's in pain, which is something that nobody's prepared for, in a way, in which he acknowledges that you have to dialogue with that pain. You do everything you can to deal with that pain, but it's very powerful and it takes over your consciousness. And he claims sort of excitement about the adventure to come, and also a not knowing. Baba Ram Dass, who had a stroke 15 years ago and has been in a wheelchair for all that time, talks also about the pain and about his spiritual life, and also about not knowing. So, here are two guys, one of them who has died, who had his ashes sent into space and are now circling around the world that we, you can look up there probably and see Tim somewhere, moving around in space, and I'm hoping he's happy up there. Ram Dass is still with us, and so are we. We are kind of on the Ram Dass track, meaning the spiritual track to breaking out of the box. I have experienced breaking out of the box. And I've talked about it for 5 years now. And I have begun to think I got to stop talking about my breaking out of the box. And I have to stop talking about it because it separates me on some level from you. And I don't feel any separation at all. And it creates a hierarchy, which I think is a false hierarchy, because anyone who steps out of the box knows that nobody's in it. Nobody. There is a difference of knowing and not knowing, kind of. But is it an important difference? I honestly don't know. I'm not on the Bruce journey, I know that, but I'm still here, and there's still a journey. And that journey has no more ultimate awareness of, where it's going or what it's really about or what's happening. I'm just aware that it's happening, and I'm aware that I am that which is happening, as are we all. We're all that which is happening. So, I really want to step back from separating myself on any level, because I think it's a false separation, and it creates a desire for a box person to become a non-box person. But a box person can't become a non-box person because you never were a box person. How can you become the thing? How can you unbecome something that you're not? It just doesn't work. There's no way. It's not going to happen. So I have kind of nothing to offer, in a way, except I can say to you as a box that you're not a box, but you're not going to really buy that. I mean, you may buy it intellectually, but until you know it, until you kind of go, oh, okay, until you know it, it's just like hearsay. And it's something to desire, and it's something that the box desires, and the box desiring it is reinforcing the box rather than getting rid of it. So it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum that anyone who tries to teach faces. How do I help people out of the box? Well, one thing I've understood, rather simply, is that the box is incredibly reinforced by believing what you think and feel. You believe what you think, and you believe what you feel. And you take them as yours, and you do something called react to your thoughts, and you react to your emotions, and in reacting, you are reinforcing and building the box. So I can tell you, as a very simple practice, watch yourself thinking and feeling, and don't buy it. Don't engage it. Just go, oh, that's a thought. Oh, that's a feeling. Not my thought, my feeling. A thought, a feeling. When you buy a thought, and you've all heard this before, when you buy into a thought or a feeling, it locks into the structure. When you observe a thought or a feeling and you don't buy it, it just goes, it's gone. It has no building capacity. It's completely you who defines and constructs the structure that you're in. Completely you. Nobody else. And you're doing it based on information you were given by parents and teachers and friends. So you're just following a practice that you've been doing since you were a little kid, and you were completely unconscious when you were a little kid. So the thing that's building this box is this unconscious little person that's been doing it forever and has not been analyzed, looked at, examined on any level unless you've been to a psychiatrist. But then that's just another way of looking at, the box. So this becomes a conundrum. How do we get out of it? Well, the technique I just gave you a minute ago is maybe one of the good ways of doing it. Just be conscious enough to watch yourself as you construct you. And then maybe you can begin deconstructing you, or maybe you can actually arrive at this moment where you go, I get it. I built this thing, I am not this thing. The I that built it. The I that built it, what is that? What is this I putting the box in place? What is this I? This I am thing. That's worth looking at. It's what you are. It's what you are. The I am, the I is absolutely at the core. So finding what this I is that built you into this being, or is still building you, is the one constant in your existence. Digging down and just looking at that. And one of the best ways to do that is sitting still. And as you sit still, really still, you start to feel yourself wafting out beyond the boundaries of your body, beyond the boundaries of your mind and your feelings. You just feel this presence. And somehow this presence has a kind of wisdom, a knowing, a being that is in many ways undefinable. And the minute you associate with this presence, you realize it's always been there, but the walls of the box have not always been there. And they keep redefining themselves and shifting and shaping, and everything within it shifts and shapes, but this presence just goes beyond that. You don't know what it is, but you do know it's what you are. And that any attempt to define what it is creates the box again. Because the box wants to know what it is or what I am. But just letting go of that and just being starts to reach out, and you suddenly realize stupid things like, I'm the pillow, I'm my butt, I am the camera here, I'm the carpet, I'm everybody sitting around me, I'm the altar, I'm the couch, I'm the sky, I'm the trees. I mean, you don't even have to define it, because that defining gets in the way. But you're just all of this stuff. You are what is. Some people call it the absolute, some people call it totality. That still limits it for the mind to grasp it and make you comfortable. But ultimately, without definition, without effort, without anything, there just is this, whatever it is. And, we can talk about it being a deathless state. Some people do. Great if that's true. I suspect it is true. Does our mind go on forever? Do we get to take all that box of photographs in the garage with us wherever we go? Don't know. Doubt it. Doubt it. Will you miss it? That's a big question. That's a big question. It's what holds most of us here. Will you miss this? Well, the only thing I can throw out a little tiny little bit, when you go to bed at night and your head hits the pillow and you're having these little moments of thoughts that have rational quality to them and then kind of irrational quality, and you go, ah. It's as they break up from rational to irrational that you're beginning to leave the world of you. And how many of you fight that? Well, I mean, I know some of you do, and and some of us lie there at night struggling to get to that place. But that journey, which, I look at my grandson, he said, nap time. He goes, oh, no. You put him down, and he's like, oh, just gives himself over to it, doesn't fight it for a second. I think in the end, that's probably a description of something that will be so familiar, so welcomed. And some of us may struggle, some of us may fight the journey, but, what about my box of memories? You go through all that, and then it just starts to break down, and then it may be that simple. May not. I don't know. But I will tell you this. Letting go of the box, or having the box reveal itself to have never truly been there, seems worth it. It's somehow true. It's somehow unavoidable. To know it in life while you're here allows you to share it with people who might want to know about it. On the other hand, you're not going to meet a lot of those people, and the thing you can do if you don't want to teach it, be it. Walk around boxless. Walk around as an acknowledgement of shared oneness. Just be it. You don't have to do anything. But when you're outside of the box, you can't help being what is outside the box, because that's what you are. And that's where we're all at. We're all working our way within, without, one way or another. You're already free of the box because it never existed in the first place. You're all completely what you want to be. You can be Woody Allen and make jokes. You can be Tim Leary and become celebrated. You could become Ram Dass and find your way deeper into the truth of all of this. Or you can just be you, mixing it up in whatever way you mix it up. It's your life. And I'm telling you, if you don't have to hold on to anything, if you don't have to hold on to that thought, if you don't have to hold on to that emotion, you will feel free. You'll just feel free. Freer and freer. Because you don't have to do anything. I mean, maybe eat, but even that, you can choose at some point not to do that. So, we're all basically free inside the boundaries of a prison that we have created called our box. And you can exist beyond the box anytime. Anytime. Just know it. Any questions?
So if you would live completely in isolation, nothing around you, nobody around you, you still think there's a box?
Sure.
For what purpose?
Probably more box than ever. Because the body is the beginning of the box. The mind is the beginning of the box. It needs definition. It needs limitation. It needs to know its boundaries. Even kids with autism, they do this thing called stimming. when I talked to a little boy about that, he was very articulate, and he said he stimmed because he needed to know the boundaries of his body. He couldn't feel them. But when he did this, he knew where he ended. And when you're in a prison cell, and you see the four walls, and they're really close up, and you're in solitary confinement, you know, if ever there's a time where the self is reinforcing itself, I think that's where it's at. I don't know how many people become awake in that situation. Some may. But for a lot of people, there's a kind of a madness that goes on, or a kind of spending a lot of time with the ants crawling around the floor, finding some definition of their existence, regretting, wishing it was otherwise, getting angry at everybody, whatever it is. Thoughts keep coming up. I don't care where you are. Feelings keep coming up. You still have to deal with your mother left you, your father never loved you, whatever those things are. That's a defining box. And you can't get out of that box without really getting still. Stillness is, you know, the portal. The portal to out of the box is in the center of the heart. And I literally call it the portal. And if you can only find it in stillness, and if you go into that space, it just opens. And there you are, here. And that's all you need to know. And it is like this. It's like falling asleep awake. It's like, ah. And it can last a long time or not. It may last 10 minutes. You know, and then your mind creeps in and you're on your other journey. But you can also get reinforced over and over. The great thing about what we do, the Kundalini Yoga meditation, the energy work, is that it brings you into that place over and over and over. And then everybody describes to me in their dramas how sad they are that they couldn't hold it. Well, you can't hold it. What's to hold? You can only let go every time something wants to redefine it. Just go, kind of pass. I pass. Not going to go there. Not going to take that thought, not going to take that emotion. I'm just going to stay here. And it's a kind of an effort, but it's in time kind of effortless, because you just go, why do I need any of that other stuff? You don't, because it doesn't do anything but constrict again. You just stay free.
So as a human being, you know, we're all balls of white light with layers of stuff or whatever, we're a box, but you have to have some kind of definition to function in the world, because we've said before, we're not Nityananda and people take care of us, and here we are. So you have to have the minimal of who you are so you know how to function. So I've been sort of comparing Rudy and what I know about him, which is just from his books, and the I Am That, Nisargadatta, and I'm comparing them because I see a very difference in who they were or who they are on paper in my perception. And what I see in I Am That is, well, I find it a little irritating because he almost is condescending to people and, well, go kill yourself and see what happens, or do this. And he says all these different things, and I find him irritating, and I still have 100 pages to go. But I do see what he's saying, and I get it. I'm 3/4 through. But
it doesn't change by the end.
But that's what I love about Rudy, because, and I want to add, my question to you is Rudy's box, but, you know, Rudy was a human, and he had his faults, and he had this, but you put the spiritual and the physical, you have responsibilities, you work, you live your life. You know, he's not telling you you have to do this, you have to do that, but you do have responsibilities as a person in this world. And here's I Am That. He just seems to want to be, and that's fine, and he sells cigarettes, but he's very condescending to the questions.
A lot of people in non-dualistic Advaita yoga groups or teachings do have that. That's what I was trying to apologize about a little bit before. You know, there is something when you suddenly realize that none of us are really in a box, and then you watch all these people banging their heads against it, and you kind of go, you know, what are you doing? You know, you kind of get to the point of going, this is ridiculous, and how much do you want to sit and help people through that when they're clearly kind of entertaining it or are so lost in it because of their own ignorance, which is what Buddha said. What do you want to help those people? And how do you help them? And I think Rudy, helped us become human so that we could move beyond this thing of the box. It's easier to get out of a box when you are content within it than when you're fighting against it. When you accept it, when you work it well, when you've become a real human being or a full human being, what happens is you start to realize life in a whole other way because you've reached the top of Maslow's hierarchical chart of, what's it called?
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization, yeah. When you get to the top, which is I think what Rudy was helping us build to, you can then go like that. When you're here going like that and life is conflicted and you're nothing's working and you're unhappy because I don't have this and I should have had that and why didn't that happen to me, and you're going through all that stuff, wow, that's hard to calm down. Wow, that's hard to build to a self-actualized place. So people who would go to see Nisargadatta tended to be people who wanted to be there, wanted to be free, but were still really in their own ignorance holding on to the box in many different ways. And he was just trying to shatter that box, just get rid of it. Rudy was taking all of us unformed kids, is basically what we were, and trying to build a better box to let go of, or to become free of. Don't be at war with the two sides. I totally understand the condescension, and I get it, and I wonder a lot of the time, why am I bothering? Why do I bother? And it's only compassion, because I care about you, and because I really would love for you to go, oh, I get it. That would be, I would love that. It's not important, really. Not important for me. It's kind of more, I don't even know if it's important for you, because one day you're going to know it. One day the box falls apart. But I have to say, when the box does fall apart, there are different reactions to it. And there are many people in asylums for whom the box fell apart and they had no language for it. They had no preparation for it. They had no knowledge that this could happen. And they're just left out there with psychiatrists who don't get it either. There are people like Eckhart Tolle, who when his box fell apart, sat on a park bench going, for 2 years. My box broke apart 50 years ago, and then I spent 45 years going, now what? Now what? I didn't understand. It didn't break apart completely. It just shattered and kind of reformed around Bruce with a new search in place. And so I spent 45 years looking and working it through and working it through. And then there came a moment where it just went, they call it the burning out of the candle. It was like nothing. It was like nothing happened. It was like, oh, that can happen. So there's many forms of what can happen. Is it important to get out of this box? Well, I can't say it is, but the craziness is to live in a box that doesn't exist. What does that mean? What would this world be if that wasn't the case? What would it be? Hard to imagine. Eckhart tries to imagine it. He keeps writing about it. I can't even imagine how it would ever happen. You look at people in Syria and the Middle East and you go, wow, when are they going to break out of this box? It's like you've just questioned that the world is such a dense space on so many levels. But within it, there's this bubbling out of awareness and breaking down outside the box, coming back in, starting to figure the boundaries, starting to go, oh, I hear this box isn't real. I hear this isn't really going to, that it's me who's doing this. And you start to really play with that. And then one day you look at it really clearly and you go, who needs it? You don't even do that, actually, because it happens. There's no you that does it.
That's the part in the I Am That book I thought was so wonderful, was that he talks actively about the presence becoming stronger on its own, and that the individual, the student who's asking the questions, isn't really doing it. But that he can kind of get out of the way, that the presence becomes really strong.
That's exactly what happens. And in this class, I will tell you, because it's energetic work, none of you, especially today, none of you weren't amazingly present. Amazingly present. Every one of you today was sitting here in a state of remarkable presence, allowing this manifestation of the presence to relate in absolutely profoundly deep and resonant terms. And it's beautiful to see that happen. And it has some aggregate of value. I don't know what it is. I just know from my own practice that somehow I felt like I earned the right over the course of years and practice to the very thing I was seeking, which was, I didn't know it, the abolition of the seeker. So since it's doable and possible, and I guess that's what I'm here to talk about, it's doable and possible for everybody. And if Bruce Rubin from Detroit, Michigan can do this, you know, if Nicole from Allen Park can do this, it's doable. It's doable. Meaning, you go, oh, done. Done. And if you sit here frustrated by that because you sense it's not done, I can only tell you it was my frustration that it wasn't done that finally led to it happening. So I don't put down your frustration. I get it. But it's all part of the process, and I don't understand why we go through a process or how this happens. All I know is it is. And at its very core, there's something unbelievably embracing about it. That's all I can say. Okay? Okay, I think we're here next week. Next week, and then I go to LA, back here for a week, then to New York, then back here for a bit. And, you know, I mean, look, part of what I go through every week now is, you know, what am I doing? Why sit here? But, and I ask that regularly. I asked it this morning. But, you know, if you show up, then I'll be here. If you don't show up, I am happy not to be. So it's kind of in your corner, not mine. Okay?